All right, traders, in this video, my goal is to help you understand how to read and assess the optimization KPIs within the Tickblaze strategy desktop. Now, KPIs stand for key performance indicators, and this will be an overlap to what we looked at in the backtesting video because we're going to be looking at some similar metrics, but there is some differences and some specific nuances that pertain to optimization. And that's what I hope to do in this video, is to give you the lay of the land, help you understand how to read the data from an optimization report. Now, we're not going to look at optimizing multiple strategies for this example, because whether you're optimizing one strategy or you're looking at multiple strategies, the data resources that we're going to be assessing are ultimately going to be the same. Okay, so what I've done is I've basically selected the strategy here. I'm going to edit the parameters. I'm not going to really be too interested in changing this from the defaults, but this is really important because you can go through and change what you want to see in the metric results, and then you can ultimately change what you want to see in your optimization report, right? And we covered that in the primary optimization video. If you haven't watched that, please go back to the channel and check that out now. Now, under the parameters video, I'm looking at strategy number 0, which is the stock portfolio. And for this example, I'm just going to be optimizing the EMAs, and I set the step increments to 5 and a low to a high period here. Okay. Now, I'm not optimizing the other 3 strategies, so I want to make sure they're unchecked. And that way, when I run this, I can basically pull this from data. Now, I'm going to look over the current year. That way, I'm looking at the stock portfolio from this performance report for this year, and let's load it. Now it's going to load the data, and ultimately it's going to run the optimization run. It normally takes a very short period of time. You can see how fast it runs those optimizations. And the bottom progress bar will give you the update as it starts to unfold. And then as soon as this is done populating, we're going to see some data. Now this is exactly what I mean by understanding the optimization KPIs. Step 1 with the optimization is to make sense of this data. Then what we can do is we can choose the best parameters, okay, right here, and we can run a backtest, which will then take us to the next stage of understanding the KPIs. So ultimately, the first step is to realize that these variables, like these columns here, right? If I look at parameter values, the score, the CAGR, ending equity, max drawdown percentage, net profit percentage, the Sharpe ratio, average P&L, how many positions we took, how many trades we had. These were all pre-configured in the settings window when we first did the optimization setup. And it's because we chose that we wanted to see them. And essentially, these are all different variables which you can hover over, and you can actually see the tooltips to what they're actually going to tell you. Now, the same information can also be found in the wiki, which you can easily go up here into the menu item when I'm not in this window, and I can pull that from the documentations tab. All you need to do is search for the word performance, and you will be able to find that. Let's do that right now. One of the things you can actually do is you can always go to the Tickblaze website. If you ever need assistance on understanding KPI data, you can basically go here to platform, go to documentation, search under the search, and just search for performance. Okay, and hit OK. And now you're going to hear there's a performance summary. And what the performance summary does is it tells you the breakdown of what all these details are. And they're going to be transferable across backtesting and optimization, right? Like the CAGR is the CAGR for everything, right? Ending equity, starting equity is the same. Net profit's always going to be net profit. So whether you're looking at it from a backtest perspective or from an optimization, it's irrelevant. But if you ever have any questions, just hover over the columns. It'll give you a breakdown. And if there isn't a tooltip, then go into the actual wiki and you'll be able to find that details there. Now you'll notice here that we're searching for score. Very, very important that every time we run an optimization, the score column is what the output is, right? It's whatever you're choosing to optimize. If you're optimizing for profit factor, that's what that would be, right? If you're optimizing for winning percentage, this is what it's going to be. If you're optimizing for net profit, it's going to be that, right? And the goal here is for always to look for the best score, right? We want to have the highest score in the report, which tells us the best parameters. Now in this example, it's the 45 and the 140, right? You can see the parameter values right here, right? And if we search by score, you can see it's the 45 and the 140. And that's exactly what we're looking at. And it gave you the best result, the drawdown percentage, the max drawdown, net profit percentage, Sharpe ratio, etc. And the goal here is to be able to understand what that data is telling you, because you're the one that's looking for it, right? Now you can ultimately go in here and you can choose the visual graph. This is always something that a lot of people find very visually appealing. Some of you that are come from a stats background or from a quantitative background will appreciate what these graphs will mean. But for the most part, green up to the right means good, right? So what we're gonna do is we're gonna then go into the back test, and this is where we get to actually really dive into the KPIs. And the reason we back test this is because the optimization is to tell us that, okay, these different variables, like this variable produced this result, this variable produced this result, right? These are different parameters. And what we really want to do now is we really want to get a full picture of the full backtest of the best parameters, right? We optimize for the best parameters, and then we run the backtest inside of Tickblaze to give us the overall performance metrics. And this is where we really get to dive deep into all of the different metrics as we discussed in prior videos. You get a chance to see the summary. You can look at all positions, winning positions. You can look at losing positions. The overall main metric section is where a lot of people gravitate to, because you can see the main goal here: profit factor, your recovery factor, Sharpe ratios, your win-loss ratio, your luck coefficient, your payoff ratio, your expectancy on each trade. You can come up here and take a look at the winning percentage, your starting balance, your ending balance, and profit. Really, really nice to be able to see those details. Then we can come in and we can look at the graphs, right? And the graph is where you get to visually see the performance of your strategy. And what's nice about the graph is you can choose between daily, weekly, monthly. You can come in here and you can ultimately search between equity curve. You can look at net profit. Maybe you want to come in here and you want to look at your max drawdown, right? If you want to go back up here to equity curve, but maybe you want to turn it to monthly, and then you want to come down here to look at net profit. You can see this. You can actually see the profit on a monthly basis, which is nice. The visuals are quite appealing, to be honest. You can switch this to a weekly. You can actually see the weekly profit, which is quite appealing as well. And then you can switch it to a daily profit, and you can basically see that here in this perspective, right? And you can ultimately drag this down and take a look at things as you see fit. But most importantly, you really get the ability to customize your visuals through the graphs. Now, this is a KPI video, so what I want to do is I want to break down these different tabs here. The first one is the period breakdown. And the reason the period breakdown is so important is because a lot of people want to look at things from a granular level. You could look at an hours per day. You want to see, okay, which is the most profitable hours? And this is where the strategy took most of its trades, right? You can see this is important. Now, if you want to come to day of week, maybe you want to look at the day of week and you want to say, okay, well, Thursday didn't really do too well. On historical data over the last year, Thursday was the worst day, right? Friday seemed to be doing pretty good, right? And maybe that's because a lot of the trades closed at the end of the week, but maybe it's because you just had better results on a Friday, right? If you want to look at different months, and if you want to look at it from a monthly basis, you can look at it over the last 12 months or 11 months. And you're going to see that, okay, we had a drawdown here and all the money was made in October, right? Which is interesting, right? Maybe there's something going on in the strategy that basically allowed that. That's the average P&L, and you can take a look at those details, and maybe that's what you want to pay attention to. You want to say, okay, what's going on over here? Did all of your trades close? Maybe you're swing trading the market and you're holding on for a while, and then all of a sudden they all closed, which means all your money was made in the portfolio at the very end when you exited your positions, right? You need to look at this data, right? You can see that it tells a different story when you look at it from a weekly perspective than an hourly or a monthly, right? And there's different data points that you can go in and you can see this. And I think it's just really, really important for you to understand that, this is there for you to assess the information, right? To assess the strategy, to assess the details that you're breaking down. Now, when you look at the symbol breakdown, what this does is it tells you how many trades you took per market, right? And it really tells you how many trades you took across the portfolio. Most of your trades were in the ETFs, a little bit more in Google, had a couple in Apple, but for the most part, all of these other markets took, 2 trades, which tells me that it was very correlated. This portfolio was a very correlated portfolio. And that may be a good thing, but that also may not be a best thing for you, right? Maybe you want to have non-correlated portfolios. Maybe you want to break down a different portfolio for different metrics. You want to have a tech portfolio, an energy portfolio, a blue chip portfolio, whatever the case may be. This data would concern me because ultimately it tells me that if something were to happen, the portfolio is really going to be correlated to whatever's going on across the entire basket of markets, right? And that makes sense. You can see a lot of technology companies in here, and that would make a lot of sense in terms of how that works. Now, when you look at profit distribution, you're going to be able to see where you make all your money and where you took all your losses, right? Which is really going to see you got a lot of there's a lot of trades and a lot of losses that took place in this range. You can see the profit distribution is mapped out. You can look at percentage, you can look at total P&L, you can look at different variables, the average P&L. It really just depends on how you want to see the data. But you can scroll through here and you can sort through this information as you see fit, okay? Now the maximum adverse excursion and the maximum favorable excursion are basically looking at your drawdown scenarios as well as your target scenarios. And this will normally tell you like how well you manage your downside risk versus how well you manage your upside potential. And you can actually come in here and you can actually take a look at the different graphs and you can take a look at different variables, how you see that and how you want to assess that data. Now the MFE is your upside potential, and this really tells you like, if you're taking your exits and you have the potential to hold on for bigger moves, this information will tell you that as long as you know how to break that down. And we're going to do some extra training on optimizing and data points, but be on the lookout for some new videos as we break down the channel. Now, the goal here is to bring you back to the graph so that you can get a full picture of what's taking place. And this makes sense, right? There's a pretty strong equity curve, but then look at this drawdown here. And that's what we were seeing in those results, right? We were actually seeing that across some of the months. We were seeing that across some of the asset classes. Just because you ended strong doesn't mean it was a really, really smooth ride, right? We don't really want to see those types of drawdowns if you have a stable strategy, right? And that's the whole goal of testing and looking at the data, okay? Now, the goal here is to ultimately bring you back into the strategy. So if you look at the workspaces, when you assess the data, okay, you're going to be able to see here that the data points, you can see the entries, right? You can actually see, I'm going to make this a little bit easier for you to see here for the keep it clean like that. And what this does is you can actually see the strategies. Like you can see the long here, you can see the close here, right? But this is a daily, and we only went back to the beginning of the year, right? So if we go back and we add more days, let's go back and add a year to data. Let's take a look here. I don't think it'll let you load more days. It only lets you load as many days back as the strategy allows, right? And that would make sense because that's January and that's February and that's March, and we only went back a year, so we're not going to see any more data on that back test, right? If you want to see more days, you got to load a bigger back test, okay? And that's good practice, right? If you come back here and you take a look at how far you went, and then you go into the workspaces and you actually see you can't see anything past, it's because we don't have any more data loaded in the back test, right? And you can look at some of the markets, like you can look at the Qs. You can take a look at XLI, you can take a look at all the different asset classes and take a look at Google, how well did it work, right? How well did it perform? And this is really the goal of being able to take a look at that optimization report, come into the data. You can assess the strategies as a bird's eye view. You can assess the positions, right? Open positions won't be true because we're in a back test, so you're gonna look at all closed trades. And you can really sort by looking at the data, right? If you really want to come in here and want to look at P&L, right? The biggest trade, right? The biggest position was a pretty big trade here, right? And that's the goal, right? And we want to take a look at that. I think that's a cumulative P&L, the total P&L between the positions opening. Yeah, so I think it's a cumulative. But the point is that you can look at trade P&L, right? The NASDAQ trade here was a pretty big trade, right? And that was under Meta, right? The spiders had a pretty big trade. And you can see the percentage change and the change percentage on these and the account P&L and the P&L on the trade. So, this is where you can see the lion's share of your profits are made in these bigger trades, and the rest of the drawdown came down here. You can see the biggest loser. Let's take a look at the P&L percentage. I think it was here. The biggest loss was, 14 grand on a trade, right? And so this is what you can do. You can come in here and look at your positions, but more importantly, study the KPIs. Like look at the data, look at the information that it's telling you, and be able to make sense of the information. And you can customize the columns. You can go through all this and set this up the way you choose to. It was the same as we talked about inside of the backtesting video. But when you look at optimizations, the goal is to bring your parameters back to a profitable backtest so you can actually see the visuals, right? You can go through orders. You can go through canceled orders, filled orders, all of the different orders for the positions, and you'll be able to sort through all the different buys and sells and look at the data. And then ultimately, if you come in here and you look at the logs are really for you to test your broker connections and your data connections. And if any time you have an outage, or if there's a computer outage or a broker disconnect or a data disconnect, you're going to see that in the error logs. And at the end of the day, it really boils down to, are you happy with the performance? Are you happy with the visuals that you're seeing? Are you happy with the data that's coming from the reports? Are you really enjoying the fact that your strategy is producing like this? Or are you looking to make something better? You're going to run the back test, you're going to run the optimizations, but more importantly, you're going to have to do the work to be able to assess the best strategy. And that's the benefit of trading. You put in that time, you assess the details. Tickblaze does all the heavy lifting, and you just need to come to a decision if you're ready to deploy the strategy into live markets, right? So the goal here is to be able to build a test strategy and back test it, optimize that strategy, right? And then take those variables and back test it so you can actually see the performance of that strategy in real time, as well as look at historical data. So traders, I hope you enjoyed the KPI video for the optimization parameters. You can do the same if you're optimizing one strategy or you're optimizing multiple strategies. It's just going to take a little bit more time to run those optimizations. But at the end of the day, the goal is to run the back test and then assess the data for the KPIs. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you have any questions on optimizing or testing strategies or studying the data within your portfolio, you can send us some screenshots. Our team would be more than happy to take a look, or you can always join us in the AMAs where we break down the platform and we teach how to do this on different occasions. Take care, traders, and we'll see you on the charts.